Would love to have you all maybe put in the chat where you're calling in from, to see where we have folks kind of joining us from. And we'll get started shortly. We're sorry for starting a little late today. It's my fault. It's always my fault when we start late. Awesome. LA, Minnesota, Maryland. Awesome. All over. That's great. So today we have two amazing alumni of both the Foundations and Career Jumpstart Avocademy program that are going to share a little bit about their experience, as well as answer any questions that you all have. This session goes the best when you all ask questions and I don't have to ask them questions because I kind of already know a lot about them and I've worked with them over the past couple months. So please don't be shy. Put some questions into the chat. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and we're going to get started. But really, we're waiting for you all to put questions in the chat so we can get to the good stuff. My name is Maka. I'm the founder of Avocademy. I'm also still a mentor in the Career Jumpstart program. So I work with folks all day long and sometimes very late into the night to help them with their projects and career search and give them feedback and help them negotiate offers. And we have Carla here joining us. Carla, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Carla. I work here at Avocademy. I'm a career mentor. And yeah.
Nice. So Carla will be helping us answer some questions if we get any questions about Avocademy and the program. And then maybe Steffi, do you want to kick us off with just an introduction, maybe who you are, what you were doing before you decided to kind of break into this field and what your job is now?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Steffi. I have a background in education. So I was an educator for about 11 years and just got really burnt out at the end of it. In the 11 years, in the tail end of those 11 years, I also adopted 4 children and just kind of got to a point where I realized that I was giving more to education than my own children. And so I decided I needed to switch. So then I went down this rabbit hole of just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Stumbled across UX design and fell in love with it immediately. So then I went down another rabbit hole of researching all the boot camps and options that I could take to pursue this career coming from education. And I found Avocademy. I actually don't remember exactly where. I just remember seeing it in multiple places. And then it started showing up, like on Instagram and TikTok and all that too. But what really sold me was that this program was really flexible. Like I said, I was a teacher, so I was working long hours and then I would go home and take care of my children. And so I needed a very, very flexible program. And it was very affordable as well. Some of the programs I was looking at was in like the $15,000 range. And I was like, I just can't do that. I had taken, a master's in education and I was like, I don't want to take on student loans and things like that to make this career change. And so I decided to, and also like just the short time frame, like it wasn't going to take me like 6 months to get there because I knew I wanted to try to leave education at the end of the school year that I started in. Then I started Avocademy. I loved it. It was the perfect program for me. And then I also did Career Jumpstart after that. I actually worked with Robin on the project. It's really cool to be here with her today. And I now am a UX UI designer for a fintech SaaS company in Springdale, Arkansas, which is where I live. And I'm loving every minute of it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Robin, your turn.
Hi guys, I'm Robin, and I started Foundations earlier this year, and I found Avocademy through TikTok. Carla was spamming my For You page. I saw her nonstop dancing, and I said, okay, let me at least try it out. And the reason why I was transitioning because I have a background in healthcare. The pandemic did me in. It burnt me out completely. I couldn't do it anymore. I was actually about to go into a program for a nurse practitioner, and I decided I wanted to do tech or some technical creative role because I do have a background in coding. I self-taught myself different coding languages. And I used to do it for fun, and I found that I was good at it. And then I wanted to do something a little bit more creative. So I found UX, and I decided with Avocademy, after Carla kept spamming my For You page, and I thought it was affordable. And the mentorship really sold me, because I said, I'm going to need help with this pivot. I knew I wouldn't be able to do it alone. And so from there, I did Avocademy. Foundations was really flexible, because it took me way longer. Vaco knows, it took me longer than everyone else. And I kept getting sick. And then I was very close to giving up, but I kept pushing, because they work with you. They will be very flexible. They will work with you. And then I did Career Jumpstart, and I did work with Steffi, and I learned so much from her. I learned how to be a really, really good lead from her. So, and now I work as a UX designer for a huge company, software company. I still am shocked. I've been here for a little over a week now, and I love it. I love the team. I love the culture, the diversity. So yeah, that's my story. Sorry,
Nice.
you know, Zero wanting to join us.
Thank you both for sharing a little bit, about your path. I find it so interesting. You both come from like two backgrounds that we always talk about, how it's, education and healthcare. They're both fields where you're working with a lot of stakeholders. If we're talking in like UX language, right? Like you're working with a lot of patients that are probably not super easy to work with. And then, in healthcare, in teaching, you're like working with a lot of students that are either young, and then their parents, and then other staff. So we always talk about like the similarities between healthcare and UX, and then education and UX. So I love that you're kind of both on this call, kind of bringing that up. And that's kind of what I was thinking, right? Like the empathy that you have in those, like your background can be applicable to your UX job, which I'm sure that helped both of you kind of get there. Awesome. We have some questions rolling in, which is great. I won't have to make some stuff up to ask you. So Cynthia's asking, did you find it easy to stay on the course timeline? So I'll talk about, I'm going to just quickly do a time overview of both programs, and I'll talk about some things that have changed since probably both of you did foundations. So we have our foundations program. That is an individual program. And what I mean by that is that you are working with mentors, but you're not working with other students. Like you are trying to like learn the foundations on your own. The program right now gives you 16 weeks of unlimited mentorship. So from when you start, you have 16 weeks to finish. And we have like a 16-week timeline and an 8-week timeline that you can choose. And it kind of tells you like when your activities should be done for you to stay on that timeline. Then for Career Jumpstart program, that is a program that the first 2 weeks you work on your design skills. So we're like teaching you advanced design skills. And then you're spending 2 months working on real world projects with other students. And that's where Robin and Steffi were saying that they got to work together in those projects. And then after those 2 months, you spend 6 months actually looking for work. And hopefully you find a job with it before the 6 months are up, but it can take anywhere from like 2 weeks to 6 months. And if you all watch some of these other videos we have on YouTube, you'll see some people find jobs super quick. Others, it takes them a little bit longer. So that's the general timeline for foundations and CJ. Steffi, do you want to kick us off on like how easy was it for you to stay on timeline? And you kind of already mentioned some of the stuff that like was taking up your time, like, your kids and like your full-time job. But yeah, tell us a little bit about timeline and what that looked like for you.
Yeah, in terms of foundations, I was doing a really, really good job of staying on track. And then I had 1 week where I fell behind a little with the reading. There are just a couple modules that there was a lot of information that was thrown at us, and I fell behind. And so I couldn't catch back up, but what Avocademy did with me was kind of adjust my timeline. So I just had a week extension and it all worked out just fine. So it's not hard to keep up with. I will say if you're working a full-time job and you have a family like me, it does get complicated at times. And, you know, there were times when I was just so tired after my kids went to bed and I was like, I can't do anything right now. But Avocademy was so great to work with me, and I was so thankful because I was really stressed. I am totally the overachiever. I was like, I'm gonna make sure I get this done on time. I'm gonna try work ahead of time, and my children had other plans for me, and so they are very flexible, and that was so helpful. And I know some other people that, you know, needed that flexibility, and they were very gracious to work with us too. The only like drawback to that is that if you personally are on a timeline, then that does mess up with your personal timeline. But I wasn't on a super strict personal timeline, so I didn't have a major issue with that.
Oh, my turn. Well, I was a special case because it took me a long time to finish foundation. So don't be embarrassed if it takes you longer than the 8 weeks. I don't even remember how long it took. I just know that I should have been done way before I started CJ. And I was good for a couple of modules, the first couple of weeks, and then I got sick. I caught COVID, and it really knocked me out. And then I kept getting sick afterwards. So, but Avocademy, I think it was Alex that reached out to me to adjust my timeline. So the flexibility of Avocademy came into play there. And I think it was one last time she said, I can give you a little bit more time. And I just, and I pushed through and I finished. But I think it depends on your situation, where if you're working full time, it can be a little harder. So I would just suggest you pace yourself, and time blocking is your friend. I started doing that towards the end of foundations, and that helped me a lot of be able to prioritize when to focus on the modules and the assignments and getting them turned in. And I think that was around the time I was doing my portfolio. So that is my advice, but it is a little hard. But again, it depends on your personal situation.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we learned a lot from and it's a good thing that this UX program is created by a UXer. So we do a lot of user research and we take our feedback and kind of adjust. So we kind of looked at kind of the stress of the 8 weeks and like how it, you know, how people were doing. And that's kind of why we're allowing this new like 16-week timeline that's like still gives you dates of when to do things by, but you can take a little bit longer if you need to. And on that note, you could also finish as fast as you want. So if you want to do this full time, you could probably finish in about 4 weeks if you're literally sitting at a desk 9 to 5 every single day and like going through the curriculum. We're going to jump to the next question here. Did either of you do the Google UX course or like explore that option? No, right?
I watched it on YouTube because someone uploaded the whole thing, and so
Yeah.
they did. And I didn't pick the Google UX course because from just that little bit of me watching it on YouTube, I wasn't learning anything. I am a visual learner, and sometimes I need guidance, and I knew that wouldn't fit for me. So yes and no, I didn't officially, but unofficially.
Yeah, so the question here is really like, if you're doing the Google UX course, would you recommend doing Foundations or Career Jumpstart? And I'll talk about kind of our experience with people that have done the Google UX course. For Career Jumpstart, you have to apply and you have to have a portfolio. So what happens is folks do the Google UX course and then they apply to Career Jumpstart. And sometimes because of the way the Google UX course is structured, which is peer graded, right? It means that like no one is actually checking that your work doesn't have these blaring red flags or that you're doing things right, or that you know, you're just kind of like trusting that the person that's peer reviewing your work is doing a good job, which is hard because it's also someone that's learning, right? So like it's kind of I think that's really the downside of that program. So what we see sometimes is folks applying to Career Jumpstart and their portfolios projects have a bunch of red flags. And for us to accept you into Career Jumpstart at that point is really doing you a disservice, because I mean, you know, Steffi and Robin can attest to the fact that like, you know, CJ is fast, like we move fast, you're in real timelines, you're presenting to a client, you're working with other people. So if there's skills that are missing there, it's going to be really hard for us to be able to like teach you those, you know, foundational skills to get you ready to jump into those projects. So I don't have like the data as to like how many people that apply from Google actually, you know, get into CJ and how many don't. You would have to apply to Career Jumpstart. And then if you don't get accepted, we could say, hey, maybe foundations is better for you. We give really specific feedback with our rejections from Career Jumpstart, and we tell you exactly why, because we don't want to waste your time and we want to make sure that like, you know, what needs to be improved. So I hope that kind of answers that question a little bit. We have another question here about, so how well does the course format work for us neurodivergent folks? Any data or insight into that? I don't know if either of you can talk about these. Yeah,
I can kind of talk about that because in CJ we have a Slack channel for neurodivergent. So
yeah,
and I think it actually has a really good amount of people in there. So yes, you can. The format of the course can work for you, and I think you'll be fine because I know it's a lot of people that was in that Slack channel that has found jobs too. So yeah.
yeah, and the course really allows you to it really allows you to like choose how you want to consume the course, right? Like we have a plugin that lets you like have the articles read to you if you're more of like an auditory learner. You can read, you can schedule as many one-on-one calls as you want to like go through things with mentors and review them. If you're not a person that wants to be on a video call, we can have you getting Slack feedback, right? So there's like so many different ways that you can like go through the course, and it's really it's meant to accommodate for all different types of learning, because we know that like adult learning is so different and everybody comes from so many different backgrounds. The next question here for you all is, do you all still keep in touch with your mentors?
You want to go ahead? Go ahead, Robin.
Yes. yes, I do. Because UX is, you never stop learning, and it's good to keep in contact with those who help you because they still have more experience than you. They can, I can approach a mentor, say, hey, do you have an experience with this? So yes, I keep in contact with the mentors and both foundations and CJ.
Yeah, ish. So I'm, you know, in the Slack channels with everyone. And so I check on that every once in a while. I don't check it every day like I used to because, you know, now that I'm working, I don't have as much time. But then also once you graduate from CJ and you find a job, like they, you know, Avocademy will host, I think it's twice a month, Zooms for all the graduates. And a lot of our mentors are in there too. And so we get to like keep in touch and talk to each other, which is so helpful because like I'm the sole UX UI person in my company. And so like, I don't really have anybody to kind of bounce ideas off of or hear what other people are doing. And so that's been really helpful. And so yes, ish. No direct lines of communication, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think you touched on the big one, which is like we have that like graduate Slack workspace, and people on there, like it still amazes me like how much you all like create community with each other, even if it's not with the mentors. Like Robin is still posting every Friday or every Monday, I don't know which day it is, into the CJ channel. She's, you know, always volunteering to talk to current students and like help fix stuff and like be mean to them to fix their portfolios. So I love the community that kind of got built, right, from just like everybody's engagement and like willingness to help each other, which is great. We have a bunch of questions, so I'm going to stop talking and just start, you know, telling them to you all. When you all were in the foundations program, was there anything extra on the side for UX that you were doing your own case studies, building your own portfolio, self-learning, etc.?
Not for me. Like I said, I was very busy. And so, you know, I pretty much had to focus on the foundations course itself. But it was very complete, I will say. Like you and I got to Career Jumpstart and had to put all these things into practice, into real life projects. The things that I like struggle with that I didn't know were mainly like Figma things that like I just basically watched YouTube and then it was fine. Or we would reach out to mentors. especially when it came to, Robin, do you remember when we had to work on what is it called?
Oh, yeah.
We were just like dying because we like couldn't figure it out. But as far as like the foundational, information about UX itself, I felt like Foundations did a really good job of filling in all those, all the information that I needed. I also, like I said, overachiever. So I read every single thing and watched every single video in the course. And so, if you do your part, and that's the thing that I think is most important, is that you're going to get out of this what you put into it. And I, as an educator, in my head, I was like, somebody worked really hard to put this course together. So I'm going to do my job as a student and be a good student. And so I think that's what really paid off in the end.
I was doing extra stuff on the side. I was doing daily UI challenges, which now I find very hard to do, because now I think about, why am I doing this? Because there's no why to it. It's just random. But I also was doing a lot of YouTube. Chung Bungs and Maisie Lee, I don't know their sisters, but they're both designers on YouTube with a really big following. I was looking at that, and I looked at Figma, lots and lots of Figma. That's how we figured out the auto layout issue. But that's what I was doing, because like Steffi, I'm kind of an overachiever. I read everything, as Maka has seen in CJ course. I literally read and I look at every single thing that's in the module. It will help you. It's there for a reason. And so my advice is to please read it. It helps. So yeah, I was doing a little bit of extra, but Foundations does have a lot of information. So just Foundations alone, you can gain a great sense of what UX and UI is.
Yeah,
and oh,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that when I did like CJ, I was not as meticulous about it, because I think most of CJ I did during the summer, and so I was off work, and so it was not as focused. And I remember messaging Maka, and Maka would be like, "Oh, it's in the course in this module," and it'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like I should have just paid more attention." So like literally the questions that you have will be in the course. So yeah. I really recognize that difference when I did CJ and did not do it. I was not as great of a student that time around.
You were both great. So, and I think one of the questions here was about building your portfolio. Like, part of Foundations is building your portfolio. So like, to finish and graduate Foundations, you need to have completed a couple of activities that lead you to creating your portfolio and putting your first case study in there. So I just want to clarify that, like, it's not something you have to do on your own. It's actually part of the process for Foundations. So the question here for CJ, were either of you working full-time job while you were doing it, or were you not? Like, what was your situation? I think, sorry.
I quit.
Okay.
I was living off thoughts and prayers at that point.
Yeah.
No, but I basically I saved, and I was really smart financially, so I was able to do that. I don't know. I know that's not the case for everyone, but I know so many people that is moms, dads, they have parents, they are working full-time jobs as well and still doing CJ. So it is doable. But me, yeah, thoughts and prayers. That's why I was always so active, because I had so much time.
Yeah, and we also, I'm gonna put a little disclaimer here. We also do not recommend that you quit your job to do Foundations or quit your job to do CJ. We want to make sure, like, it's a lot of pressure, right? Because now you have a timeline, and now we're talking about not only like your CJ timeline or your Foundations timeline, but like how much money do you have left, right, until you can find a job. So actually our data shows that only about 20% of students that do Foundations are unemployed or have part-time work. The rest are full-time employed. So it can definitely be done with full-time work. I think, like Robin said, I think you said time blocking, right? Like, you do have to be disciplined. I think Steffi said you get what you put into it. And like, it's very true, right? Like, we have like a buffet of options, but like you have to come up to us and like kind of, you know, take what you want, take what you need from it.
Exactly. Just to clarify
yeah.
one thing, I was working foundation. I quit for CJ.
Cool. And Steffi, same, right? Or like you were in your summer months for CJ?
So I started CJ while I was still teaching. So I did one project while I taught, and then I did the other three. Well, I did two during my summer break, and then the last project I did in CJ. Yeah, I did four. I think I did four. I can't remember how. The last project that I did in CJ, I decided I was applying for jobs which felt like a full-time job. And so at that point, that was when I quit my teaching job. I decided not to go back for the next school year because at that time I had like interviews set up and it seemed like I was headed in the right direction and could afford to take that risk, but it's totally doable. CJ, I think, is in a sense more manageable than foundations because it's a lot of doing and not so much of like consuming information. I think what I noticed in all my projects is there was a big ebb and flow. So you would have, like when you started off, it was a little slower because you had all these different things that you had to do and it kind of took some time to get all the pieces. And then we would like hit the ground running. And then towards the end, it would kind of slow down again a little bit. And so it would just have like these pockets of time where I was like, oh, we've got a lot to do, but it wasn't ever like, oh, if I can't handle this is way too much. We have so many people working together, and my team members, especially the team that I worked with Robin, like we were very upfront with each other, and we're like, we're gonna be out of town this weekend, so we can't work on it. And then the rest of us would be like, okay, we got it. Open communication is super important, and that was what helped carry us through because we all had phases throughout that project where we were in and out.
Yeah, that's great. So the next question here is just the difference between UX and UI design, and does the program help someone decide which route is best for them? So I'm going to really oversimplify this, and I definitely urge you all to like look more into it and not take my 1 minute description for it. But UX is how things work. So if you're thinking of UX, it's probably like a grayscale design of like, how does the website or application or product function? While UI is kind of like how it looks. So how can we use color and typography to kind of help the experience, right? So UX is how it works, UI is how it looks. You don't need to decide which route is better for you, but in foundations, we teach you UX research, which is like talking to people, understanding the pain points. We teach you UX design and UI design. And when you get into CJ, you can kind of choose where you contribute more if you're more interested in one than the other. But for the most part, folks are applying to generalist roles, which is UX UI designers, or also called a product designer. And this means you do a little bit of everything. And this is kind of like the easiest role to break into, because as a junior, right, like you're not super specialized, you don't have a ton of experience to get into a role. So being able to do a little bit of everything usually works. In the past, we've had people find like UX research jobs exclusively or UI design jobs exclusively. You'll definitely know once you finish foundations what you like more, right? Like I don't like UI design. I'm like, okay with UX research, but like UX design is my jam. Like that's where I feel the most comfortable. And yeah, I don't know. Do you all want to kind of share, as you went through foundations, did you realize like you like one thing more than the other? And then like, what do you do now? Like in your job, like what does your role entail?
Okay, well, I'll start. I actually was really into the research because I love to figure out the pain points of a user, why this is not working for them. So I wasn't that into the UI. I became more into the UI as I got into CJ. So, but now, funny thing is, I actually do basically just UX because my company is pretty large. We have our own UX researcher team. For my team, we have our own UX accessibility team. So I only do design and design only.
Yeah, I also didn't really know when I came out of foundations. I mean, I could rank them. UX was number one, UX research was number two, and then UI was last, mainly because I didn't have a good background in, anything related to like graphics and art and things like that, and just didn't feel confident in that area. But my current position, I am a generalist, so I do it all. I will say that I do UI the least, just because we have a front end engineer who has a background in graphic design, and so he likes that kind of stuff, so I kind of defer to him. But it is kind of intertwined too, and so we just work really closely together.
Awesome. So there's a question here that says, I already signed up, which is awesome. Welcome. But what sets Avocademy apart from other UX courses? And I think we kind of briefly, you all both kind of said why you chose Avocademy. Maybe let's touch on that quickly, right? Like why, Avocademy is what you decided to go for foundations, and like now looking back, was that right or not right? Like, was it Carla's awesome dance moves on TikTok that convinced you, or like, was there more of a consumer journey of, research and things like that?
Well, Steffi talked about the cost, because I was looking at other boot camps that was basically 15. There was one that's actually 25K, really high. And I feel like if I'm going to pay that amount of money, I might as well just go full back, get a master's in design. I know they have like those courses now for colleges. So, and also I like the structure of Avocademy. That is what stood out to me as well, and the mentorship. I do know, I think with certain other boot camps, you're assigned one mentor, and that's who you're stuck with the entire time. And I'm a people person. I like to navigate from person to person. I'm kind of like a social butterfly, even though I will not. A lot of people say that I should have been. I always used to say I'm not, but I guess I am. And yeah, that's why I personally chose Avocademy.
Yeah, same for me. Like I said before, for affordability and flexibility were, really key for me. But and looking back, like I am so happy with it. Like I don't know how many people I've talked to that I'm like, if you want to do UX, go do Avocademy. It's so great. But I don't regret it, and I feel like the other thing that really drew me was knowing that after foundations, there was career Jumpstart, and that I would get real live hands-on experience that I could put in my portfolio. And like looking back at my interview process, that was so helpful, because I could talk about like not just UX design from an ideal standpoint of like a student who just learned it and like is really excited about it, but I had real life experience where I was working with clients. I had one project where I had a very challenging client, and I talked about that client and what I learned from it. And I think that showed people, like when I left Career Jumpstart, I think I walked away with 3 or 4 job offers. And I think a lot of that was because I had these experiences from CJ that were very real, and that wasn't just is that like UX is just so beautiful and amazing. Like, no, there are some hard things too, but guess what? I can handle it, and I've done it before, and let me show you how. And so, I am so happy that I did this. I'm not in debt about with it and all that, and so that was really important too.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing. There's a question here about college education. And the question is, can someone that only has a high school diploma make a career switch into UX UI design? And the answer is yes. We've had tons of students that don't have college diplomas. I like to say that it's a very forgiving field. Like, what really matters is your portfolio, right? Like, and how you talk to your portfolio. And that has nothing to do with your degrees, or 1 degree, no degrees, as many degrees as you want. There are a couple of companies that are much larger that like do have that as like a requirement, but they're moving away from it. Like, I think even IBM, who's like, pretty established older company, doesn't even require college degrees anymore for some of these roles. So I don't, we've had plenty of people find jobs that don't have college degrees. So I'll share that. Yeah.
And can I just say one thing? One thing I noticed about my interview process is that your portfolio is key, but also your soft skills. I was
Yeah.
told by the Lexis Nexis, where I work for now, they didn't even require a degree for this position. They're a huge company. They wanted someone with soft skills. That's what they were looking for, someone who can work with cross-functional teams. So it's your soft skills that really will set you apart as well, along with your portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's key. And we see some folks that like, you know, maybe their design skills are not like, if we have two folks, and I've said this before to you all, right? Like much better design skills, but like soft skills are not there. And this person has the soft skills. This person's going to get the job time over time, to the point where like sometimes we identify folks in Career Jumpstart and we tell them like, you need to do mock interviews. You need to do mock interviews. Like we're going to keep doing mock interviews until we get you to a point where you feel comfortable. You're not awkward. You can, you know, say hi and say, how are you doing? Where do you live? You know, like have these kind of like conversations when you start interviewing. So I'm glad you pointed that out. We have 20 minutes and there's so many questions, so I'm going to try and keep going. What skills does one need to learn in foundations in order to succeed in Career Jumpstart? So like maybe what did you learn in foundations that helped you be successful? And I mean, the answer is kind of like everything.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Do everything that Avocademy tells you to do.
Yeah. In foundations, so maybe we'll answer like what skills you need to be successful in foundations. And in my experience, it's like discipline. Like you need to sit down and like do the work, and you need to know how to follow instructions. And I think those are like the two things that are gonna like make you succeed, is like you follow instructions and you sit down and do the work. And if it's hard, you schedule a mentor session. And if it's still hard, you schedule another mentor session until you kind of get it. And
that's
there's
that's an important soft skill to have now, right? Like the humility. You have to have humility and be willing to say like, hey, I don't know, like I need help. And ask for that help when you need it. And that's something that as a UX designer, UI design, like you have to have. I work for this fintech company. I know nothing about finance, nothing. I came from education, and all the time they're like talking about stuff, and I'll be like, wait. And I'll ask all these questions. I'm like, sorry, I don't know if these are stupid questions, but I don't understand what you're talking. You're speaking a different language. Can you please like backtrack? And you know, it's something that if you start working on now will take you far.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I work on a legal tool. I know nothing about lawyers or legal firms or nothing. And I ask questions all the time. I say, wait, what are you talking about? And they'll be like, oh, okay, well, go here, here, and here. And that's one thing, pace yourself. Don't try to learn everything at once, because you will fail if you try to do that. So definitely, I tried to do it one time and I failed.
Yeah, I think it's ability to ask questions, and it's so important. I remember, Robin, when you were like, "Oh, I'm interviewing for Lexis Nexis," I was like, "Look into that app because it's crazy. they're very intense." I was like, "Please look into it before you interview with them because they are like pretty robust app." And you ended up getting the job even though you had no legal experience or kind of background in that industry. So that's great. There's a question here about UX being oversaturated, and I don't know. I'll give my 2 cents. Right, there's a lot of programs, like career Google UX course. There's like 23 million people enrolled in Coursera's Google UX course. The completion rate is probably like in the single digits, right? Like there's not that many people that finish the course, and even the people that finish the course are still not equipped to become a UX designer. So what I say by that is like, there's a lot of programs that kind of churn out not great designers, and people that are just not ready to enter the field. So there's competition, and you all know that, right? Like we applied to a lot of jobs, but I think that like being equipped with the right skills and having that experience, and like that experience involves having difficult clients, working with others, having difficult teammates, right? Like that experience that CJ creates really sets you apart, because there may be 200 applicants, but like you all are going to land in the top like 20%, and they'll look at your portfolios and then they'll like want to talk to you. And then it's like your soft skills and your interviewing skills to kind of land you the job. I think there are a lot of bad designers out there that are trying to break into the field. And it's hard. It's hard for a good designer. It's even harder for a bad designer. So I don't think there's an oversaturation. Like, we have hiring partners that tell us like we can't find good designers, which is kind of crazy to hear, because there's so many, like, you know, they come to us and we're able to send them 3 people and then they hire one and it's kind of a done. But like, their problem is they can't find good designers. So I don't think there's a saturation. I think there's a lot of not great designers out there, right, that are creating this like fake saturation, because really, like, it's pretty, if you're a good designer, it's not that difficult to find a job, aside from like the crazy job market we're in right now. But like, if you apply to enough jobs and you kind of put in the work, you will find a job. I don't know if any of you have different thoughts, or like if you had this fear as you were choosing, you know, to kind of break into the career. Any thoughts around this?
I didn't have that fear. I think when I started, it wasn't as crazy as it is right now. But I mean, like, there were lots of layoffs happening and things like that when I was applying for jobs. So that did get scary, especially after I officially quit my teaching job. But what I will say again is, you know, you have to put in that work, and you just have to kind of develop that like toughness. You know, I had a very crazy journey of getting my job. Like, I had a job offer that was rescinded, and I mean, I was so devastated when that happened. But you know, I knew that I just had to get back on the horse. I had to just keep going and not give up. And you know, the day that like that job offer was rescinded, that like 30 minutes later, after I cried and all that, sorry, I'm in my office, there are people talking, but 30 minutes after that, and I like finished crying, I started emailing all those people again that I had like turned down interviews for, because I had this job offer in hand. And that's one of the companies, like one of those companies is who I'm working for right now. And so you just kind of have to like really go after it and have that grit, and be patient. You know, don't let the people who got jobs in 2 weeks like discourage you and make you think like, oh, they did it in 2 weeks, like who's gonna hire me? Like, obviously they're so great and I'm not, you know, like you just have to really put in the work.
Yeah, I agree. I applied a lot. I did over 600. I know it didn't say it on my Hunter because I just don't like that. I hated that tool. I hated that tool. I used the Notion instead, but I kept applying, and that's what you have to do. I ended up with 3 offers on the table, and I chose the one that I have now. So you just have to put in that work and make sure that, I mean, I found my job within 4 weeks, which is kind of quick for CJ compared to others, but that's not always the case. There are people, sometimes it takes them 6 months, 6 to 8 months. It's very different. The market is crazy, but don't let it discourage you. I think everything could be oversaturated, to be quite honest, but it's just about you making yourself stand out and for you to just keep pushing and using those soft skills. I'm telling you, I think my soft skills helped me score interviews, because I had a lot of interviews. I think every week I was telling Maka I had an interview with somebody. And I was like, oh yeah, I got an interview. And that constant traction was because of not just my portfolio, but my soft skills as well. So Steffi is right. Just put in the work, then you'll get what you put in. You'll get out what you put in, sorry.
Awesome. I'm going to break down this next question into some quick fire questions. Do you work remotely or in an office or hybrid?
I'm 100 remote.
I started in office, but I'll be hitting my 90 days soon. I'll be working hybrid, and then eventually we'll get to work remotely if I want to. But my company is super flexible, so I don't really need to work remotely.
Awesome. Yeah, we're still seeing a lot of remote jobs, and then folks that are not remote jobs are hybrid, and hybrid is super flexible. It can be like once a month or once a week or once a quarter, right? So it's still pretty much remote. So that's great. So there's a question here about salaries. Did you all negotiate your salaries?
I had an agency actually negotiating for me. So that's another thing. When you start the job hunt, try to get in with a agency, a recruiting agent, because they're really good of working for you.
I negotiated in some of my other job offers, but at the time, just knowing the market and, and talking to Maka is not kidding when she says she works long hours and will work with you. She worked with me one-on-one. She's like, we talked on the phone and I was like broken because of the job offer that was rescinded. Just talking to Maka and all that, I decided not to negotiate with this current position. And it's been an awesome company. And so I'm really glad I didn't negotiate and end up, not work out.
Yeah, I think we look at everybody's kind of situation, the job market, kind of where you're at, and we sometimes say like you should negotiate or you shouldn't, and if we tell you yes, we help you like write emails and kind of get that going. So that's great. And then there's a question here about salary, so I don't know if you all are comfortable answering, maybe like salary ranges, like what do your salaries look like, and if you want to pass, feel free to pass.
Well, that's been a check.
I'm gonna pass because I'm in my office right now.
Okay.
There are people by me, so I'm gonna pass.
Perfect.
On this one.
Yeah,
I'm in the 80 to 90K range.
awesome. Yeah, our career Jumpstart graduate average is around $85,000 a year. We see salaries from like the $55,000 all the way to $187,000 a year has been our highest salary. So there is like a big range, and everybody has almost like similar background of like no experience. Probably most of the folks have done foundations, and we're kind of helping them break into their first job. And then there's a question here about like, what do you like about your job, your current job? Steffi, now you can say lots of great things about your job.
Yes, I can. I work for a really great company. They're very family oriented, which is what I really need in my life right now. And so they're super flexible. I've worked here less than 90 days. I think I've taken over 40 hours off because of kids and sickness and my kids at field trips and things like that. And so they're very understanding. They actually really encourage you. Like literally someone said to me, if you have something going on with one of your kids, you should not be in the office unless you just have a really strict deadline. So I love that. And I also love just when I walk away, I'm done. Like I don't think about anything job related until I come back to work the next day. And coming from education, just that change of like, people caring about me as an individual and not just like what I can pour into other kids and how I can continually like give sacrificially. So that's like the two big things that I really enjoy right now.
Yeah, my company, I absolutely love. Again, I did not think I was going to end up at this kind of company. I thought I was going to end up at a startup. And diversity, inclusion is really big here. And like Steffi, when work is done, work is done. I told one of my senior designers, I said, I'll take my work laptop with me because I was traveling last week due to the holiday. They was like, why? They was like, don't worry about it. Because I wanted to get to know the design system a little bit more, because I was like, I'm going to be working with this and I want to make sure I get it. And they are encouraging me to unplug, to taste myself, they said, hey, you don't have to take on so much at once. We want you to understand it, but not they don't want me to rush it. So the fact that they care and tell me to slow down is really great. And the team overall, the energy with my team, the company itself, I have felt very welcome, which I'm not used to. I was like, hey, I'm waiting for you guys to be mean. And then one of the senior designers joked and said, they'll come in the third week. But yeah, it's been a great experience so far.
Awesome. I know we're getting to time here, so I'm going to ask you all a question. And then while you think of the answer, I'm going to fast fire answer as many questions as I can from the list of questions that we did not get to. So the closing question is really, if you were to give yourself advice before you started, what advice would you give yourself? And that's kind of, the folks on the call here now, or maybe watching later, are folks that are considering this career change. So like, what advice would you give yourself? I'm going to quickly read through these, but if you all want to maybe think through that, I'll try and get through these questions in like a minute. There's a question here about, did you find all the course material and foundations useful? Was there any fluff content? We have a full-time person that is constantly updating the content and adding new videos and adding new activities. And we're very thoughtful about like a learn by doing approach. So like you have to get these done to kind of keep going. You don't have to read all the content. You don't have to watch all the videos. We highly recommend that you do because they will help you get your activities done. But that's kind of a quick answer to that. There's some awesome comments for you all. The cost of Career Jumpstart and how long is Career Jumpstart? So the cost of Career Jumpstart is $5,500, and you can pay at your graduation date, which is when you get a job. And we have a job guarantee, which means that if you actually follow all of the things that we tell you to and you do not get a job offer, you don't have to pay. So, but when you do get to that, it's about $5,500. We have a bunch of different payment options. The timeline for CJ is about 8.5 months. So it's 2 weeks of design skills, 2 months of projects, and then it's going to take anywhere from 2 to 6 months of job search. So total, worst case scenario, 8.5 months. What is CJ? Folks answered, thank you. Coming from a different country, would time zone be a problem? As I know, most of the mentors are from the US. We actually have mentors for foundations all over the world, primarily in the US, West Coast, East Coast, Central Time, but we do have a couple of people elsewhere, and you can schedule calls at all sorts of time. So no, it should not be a problem. Would you recommend foundations to someone with a background in graphic design and a good understanding of UX UI? Probably yes, unless you already have a portfolio, then you can apply for Career Jumpstart. The interview process, I'm going to point you to other YouTube videos from other folks that have talked about that, just because we don't have too much time. There's a question here about portfolios that aren't designed well. We're kind of really strict with the guidelines we give you and the tools we tell you to use so that you don't make this mistake and kind of help you craft that. So feel free to reach out, info@avocademy.com, and we can help kind of answer some of those questions as well. Same thing with benefits question. I'm not going to get into that. Is this a career where clients yell or get angry at you? I come from mortgage where this is quite common. I'll do fast fire. Has anybody screamed or yelled at you in your current job yet?
No, no one's yelled at me.
No one's yelled at me. I will say that, you might get some like frustrating people that you have to deal with. I mentioned in the Career Jumpstart, I had a very difficult client, but that's just part of any job, right? Like that, where it involves people, you're gonna meet those people. And in Career Jumpstart, a lot of the mentors, like Maka herself, they were so helpful and made me feel like, okay, I'm not a crazy person for thinking that this person is being really rude to me right now. Like they, backed me up and all that. So.
Yeah, awesome. All right, let's get to the closing question. What is one piece of advice that you would give yourself before you started about starting? Or, Steffi, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I would say to believe in myself. You're definitely going to have imposter syndrome. And people talk about this throughout foundations and Career Jumpstart. It comes up a lot. We all will wrestle with it. But I definitely had to work on believing myself and believing in my worth. And this came up in Career Jumpstart too. I had a job offer that I accepted, but it paid less than what I made teaching. And I was like, I should earn more than this. And so I worked hard and I believed in that I could do better. And so you just have to find ways to, like, when your brain is saying like, oh, you suck at this, like to counter that. Like I was at the point where I was like typing down or screenshotting things, right? And then when I had those days, I would pull them up and I would read them and I talk to my husband and be like, okay, I need you to tell me that I'm good, whatever. And so, yeah, just believe in yourself. If you are doing this, like, you have made a hard decision and it's hard work, but it's so worth it.
My advice starting from foundations would be, don't be afraid to ask questions. Because in foundations, I was always scared to ask questions because I felt like I was dumb for asking it. It felt like a dumb question to me. And I was like, I'll just try to figure it out. But it took me longer to learn by doing that. So you have mentors there that you're paying for a service So utilize them. I definitely wish I asked questions more, but definitely on CJ, I asked plenty of questions. I was probably known for the mentors for slipping in their DMs and like asking for a 101. I said, hey, can you help me how to do this? That's how I learned how to, you know, I understood auto layout that way because I asked the mentor and I said, hey, can you let me know if am I doing this right? So definitely don't be afraid to ask questions. And yeah, like Steffi said, believe in yourself because you can do it.
Awesome. Thank you both for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Also, thank you, Robin's dog, for joining us today. But really appreciate your time. There's so many thank yous here in the chat. But yeah, thank you for sharing. For those of you that are interested in the course or have more questions, you can shoot us an email at info@avocademy.com for additional questions. And feel free to reach out. There's, I think, a phone number on our website that you can text as well. If you're more of a texter, or you can schedule a call and talk to one of our career mentors like Carla. And we're happy to answer questions. But yeah, thank you all for joining today. Bye, y'all.
Bye.